Thank you, everyone. Good morning, and it's really great to be here. This is our 12th year celebrating Maker Fairs and our 6th year here in Shenzhen. And I've had the honor to be with Maker Faire Shenzhen in 2015, and it's so wonderful to see it growing in 2017 here at Shenzhen Polytechnique. Just to give you some background, my background has been primarily in media, software publishing, book publishing, and then getting into events about 20 years ago, doing technical conferences for like Sun Microsystems. You might know Java 1 was the first event that I worked on. And what was really great about all the events that I've worked on is that they pulled together community. And I think that Maker Faire really embodies community, and wanted to talk a little bit about that with you today. See if I can get this right. So before we talk a little bit about the future, I just wanted to go back to the past. And what's really special about kind of the Maker movement is, I think with any movement, is that there are slogans. And when I first started working with Make in 2005, this if you can't open it, you don't own it, was really kind of the backbone of what we're doing. So things what that really means is, and I've just thrown up a Maker Bill of Rights here, but things like fixing and repairing versus buying new and replacing. Screws instead of glue, where you can actually go in and work on things. And those are sort of the embodiments and kind of where we came from. Some of the kind of values of the Maker movement, if you will, being open source and sharing, community, transparency, are all really key elements. We came, just again, more background, we started as a division of O'Reilly Media, and you might know O'Reilly Media, definitely really key in my education for open source and sharing, big in the tech community. And Maker Faire started in 2006. The magazine that we produce, Make, started in 2005. And this was really a festival to celebrate makers, and it's so wonderful to see where we've come from in the few years. I'm just going to put this down. So, Maker Movement, again, things to think about, and while you're here, you're all part of this weekend, and so I encourage each one of you to get involved in the Maker Movement. It's very open, and it's actually something that you can do. But things to think about as you look at the makers and talk to the makers are participatory culture, creative communities, and sharing. So you'll see when you're talking to makers today, and I encourage you to talk to makers when you're out there. Ask them about their project. Ask them why they're doing it or where they got something. And if it's something that you're interested in, maybe you can try to get involved with them a little bit too. But the good thing is that, again, this culture is really quite special. And again, it all started with Make. So we started with a magazine. We have books. We have online. But again, to try to be more inclusive and to try to pull in other groups and other communities, we actually created Maker Faire. So when I came on to create Maker Faire in 2005, really the opportunity was, what could it be? We didn't want it to be another technical conference. We wanted it to be include families. And we really followed the old metaphor in the United States of kind of a county fair. So things that are inside, things that are outside, a little bit of exhibits, hands-on, performances, presentations, and that's the model that we launched. We do try to celebrate makers. Again, this is all about people that are making and creating, and I encourage you as you're out there talking to people today, is that you kind of keep that in mind. We've grown. This is a picture of Maker Faire in San Mateo, and this was probably about 2009, 2010. That's Adam Savage up there, who's sort of a patron saint of makers. He does like a Sunday morning sermon in the States to actually get people excited about making. And he can really, he can actually capture the hearts of all ages. So the one thing about Maker Faire that I think is really great and that we've seen is that it's multi-generational, and it's something that the community can embrace. But in 2009, 2010 in the United States was a real pivotal moment for making. We had a recession and people were losing their jobs. The crafters were starting, and there were things like Etsy where they could sell their work. And it was a time where people started getting more involved in education and also just getting more involved and active in the movement. 2014 was also another pivotal point for us, and I think a real important point. In the United States, President Barack Obama at the time created a maker faire at the White House. So having about 200 makers come to the White House was pretty darn special. And in fact, this maker, Lindsay Lawler, with his electric giraffe, basically said his grandmother never understood what he did, but as soon as he got into the White House, she said, "What you're doing is great." So think about that today when you're talking to makers too. A lot of it is that they just want some support and encouragement for what they're doing, and that'll go a long way. There was a perfect storm as well with things like, again, open hardware, crowdsourcing, crowdfunding, kind of just a business environment for getting things going, new materials, and that actually helped kind of fuel the maker movement. With maker fairs in 2009, when we had the recessions and that, we actually got a lot of requests for folks that wanted a maker faire. They wanted it in their community. And so we needed to work to put together a plan for how we could make it happen. We're a pretty small group of people. I think we're under 50 as a company. And what we needed to do was get smart about it. So we created a playbook and actually went and found others in the community that wanted to produce maker fairs. And actually that's where you'll see kind of the rise. So 2009 and 2014, again, kind of pivotal points for us. The interesting thing is that there are 221 maker fairs around the world now in 48 countries, and my team only produces 2 of them. So we're obviously doing something right that we can actually give a playbook to the community. They can take and translate it. And when I look around here, this is actually a very beautiful maker faire. I'm very proud of the work that Eric and his team has done. There are 5 or 6 maker fairs in China now. I expect that will continue to grow, but it's really kind of wonderful to see how it's taken off around the world. The 4 largest maker fairs are Bay Area and New York, Shenzhen, and Rome. And so those are the big spectacle fairs, but I will say it's not only the big fairs. The smaller fairs are important too, because it's, again, interaction with the maker, getting hands-on, and it's not really size that matters. It's really the interaction and the inspiration and the spirit that comes from it. But looking at the future, there are a few trends that we see, and I think you'll see them here this weekend as well. This Maker Pro, Maker to Market is one area that we'll look at. Education and learning are really important. You know, our goal is to get more kids hands-on in making, and I'm seeing that actually happening time and time again. So how do we help get materials to teachers and educators, and how do we actually encourage people to move forward? You know, it's like if you give a gardener a plot of land, they'll know what to do. And so what we're trying to do is give teachers tools that they can actually take into their community. There's another interesting trend like missions and making for good, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And then we also have a pretty dynamic global network now of maker faire producers that are around the world that are actually helping out. So looking at this kind of Maker Pro community, being here on this campus too, innovation, creating the next generation of makers, how do makers go pro, and how does that actually help fuel the whole ecosystem? We'll look a little bit about that. Make has a newsletter for Maker Pros where we really try to celebrate and showcase things and makers that are actually moving forward. We have a whole area, and this is making it more available and more accessible to folks. So with resources and tools, we have a boards guide. With the magazine, we work with partners like DigiKey. Now we have Arrow here in Cyprus, and those are important for us to kind of keep that ecosystem going. And then we also are starting to see vertical communities, and I think another part that's really exciting is how this is actually manifesting and going out there. This is food making. So there's the Future Food Institute. I met these folks at Maker Faire Rome. They're out there looking at alternative proteins and sustainability, and it's really wonderful to see them and different makers that are focused in this area at Maker Faire as well. We have communities of makers. This was actually from Maker Faire New York, where we had a whole bunch of startups from Italy that were coming and using Maker Faire as a venue to showcase what they do to get in front of press, and I think that this will continue to be important. We have making DIY health or Maker Health. This is part of Jose Gomez Marquez and Annie Young from MIT. They have maker nurses, and they're out there, and a lot of innovations happening in the healthcare world, and a lot of it's happening in the back rooms at the hospital. So they're trying to get maker spaces in hospitals. So again, part of this whole Maker Pro, kind of figuring how it works in your world. Make education, again, kind of the second key area for us, giving teachers, getting them tools. At a recent Maker Faire in New York, we had a whole session trying to get teachers together to talk about the issues that they're challenged with and also start to share and collaborate. Again, all part of the open source world and environment, which is really quite good too. We have something called a school Maker Faire, which is actually, it's a free Maker Faire. We give, again, a playbook to teachers. And actually, I was talking to Carrie, who's part of the team here, and she said that they're doing it in their schools here in Shenzhen. So again, how can we get tools out there? How can we help share and create? Maker Camp. This is something that actually Google helped us start several years ago. But it's a free program, summer program that's online. We put up course material for teachers and Maker Camp affiliates to take. And they can actually use and go online. And each one of you can go online and download these projects as well. And then there's a whole host of things like books and other tools and resources that we have that we're trying to get out there and make it more accessible to folks. And then, of course, actually the gentleman here, this is the Green Bronx machine where you see making in schools, where people are just going forward. Stephen Ritz from the Green Bronx Machine is just bringing in food education into his classroom and getting kids started with learning about growing seeds, growing their own food, and actually even selling, becoming entrepreneurs. So really, that's quite good too. And then ask a maker. You know, this is the most wonderful thing about this community. Again, that sharing and participatory culture, which is quite good. Missions for makers, and I'm pretty excited about this. You might have heard of things about Burners Without Borders. There's a whole group of folks that are actually coming together that care about different initiatives, and so these Making for Good initiatives. And again, by being able to engage makers from around the world, which is another wonderful thing about this movement, is that we can pull makers together. So having makers with different backgrounds that have the same interests is really quite interesting. Right now, there's a group called Field Ready, and they're in Puerto Rico. And Dara Dots is actually leading it. They're pulling together makers with a lot of variety of background, and they're actually trying to solve some of the issues and challenges, coming up with solutions that are somewhat temporary, hopefully be long-term. But again, I'm most excited about this, especially since I'm from Sonoma County, and we just went through a whole wildfire. I don't know if you saw that, but was pretty scary and trying to see that actually the community to come together and actually help solving problems. And then again, our global community and our global network. This hasn't even been tapped, and I'm just excited about it because every one of the folks that are involved in the Maker movement, there's several Maker Faire producers that are here this weekend, but the spirit, the approach is really something that I think is going to be helpful in the future. We've launched at Make something called Maker Share, which is hopefully going to be a portfolio and a place for makers to go get online. And I think actually Monica shared with me that actually a couple of the makers here they found on Maker Share, so that's good. And this is something, it's free, but you can go on and set up a profile and hopefully start getting some recognition for some of your work. Makershare.com. And then again, kind of, from the bottom of my heart, thanking every one of you. We couldn't do this without all of you, and the fact that you're here listening to this means that you can actually have an active role in the Maker movement. There is so much work to be done, and there's so many tasks and things to do. Pretty much whatever you'd like to do probably can be done, so I encourage you to do that. And again, thank you so much. I think we have time. I have a brief little video from Maker Faire New York that would love to share with you. But also, I can't wait for the video from Maker Faire Shenzhen as well. So let's see if we can get this going. What's great about this, too, is this is the sounds of Maker Faire. This is the first video that's captured that, too.
The best thing about being here at the World Maker Faire this weekend is seeing these people from all over the world who are here for the same reason we are, because they felt a need to make a thing, and they just did it, and they bring it here, and it makes everybody so happy. And to get to be a part of that community is amazing.
official motto of Maker Faire is definitely try again, and probably try a couple more times.
So we realize that when you do things that people can participate in and kind of enjoy, that it's a lot of fun for a lot of people.
For several months, we've been getting together, drawing a group of us at night side or other departments. One day I decided, why don't we try to do a mural for Maker Faire for visitors to collaborate and make something together.
To see everybody smile, even from little kids all the way up to big biker guys, everybody's happy when he runs by.
Well, so far, we've really enjoyed delighting crowds and delighting kids especially.
People don't get to see this kind of stuff every day.
Maker Faire is awesome!
Maker Faire is like a family in the best sense of the word. People come together, they share a common interest, they find common connections, and they do things together.
Well, that was Maker Faire New York. I can't wait to see the video for Maker Faire Shenzhen. I think it's going to be a wonderful weekend. I thank you all for being here, and I think, remember, there's a genuine optimism which we all need right now in this world, and that comes out of making, and that comes out of the makers at Maker Faire. So I can't think of any other event that's multicultural, multi-generational, and from the bottom of my heart, I thank you for all being here, and I look forward to another 20 years of Maker Faire and longer. So thank you very much. And I'm around all weekend, so stop and tell me your story and keep on making. Thank you.